Meena, clearly?
Yes, Maharaj, very clearly.
Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsapachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagat Gurum. So, we were discussing the 16th verse of the 10th chapter, which is also known by the title Vibhuti Yoga. Each one of the chapters of Gita is a particular yoga. Basically speaking, generally speaking, there are 4 types of yoga, but since Gita has 18 chapters and each chapter has a unique way to connect with the Lord. Yoga means to join, to connect oneself, the Jivatma, with the Paramatma or Ishvara. So the different ways are described in these different chapters are each given a specific name. And in this case, the 10th chapter is known as Vibhuti Yoga. So by knowing the glories of the Lord, one can aspire to become one with the Lord, to dissolve one's own ego into that, or surrender oneself, one's own ego at the feet of the Lord or Ishvara. So now we come to the 16th verse where the Lord says, Arjuna asks, please kindly vaktum arhasi, thou should asheshena, without reminder. We discussed this verse, but still we'll just repeat, we'll recapitulate what we discussed. Vaktum arhasi asheshena divya hi atma vibhutayah या भी विभूति भी लोकान इमान त्वन व्याप्य तिष्ठसि. Please, through your grace, I wish that you tell me completely without any reserve. Do not withhold any information from me. Arjuna is requesting Krishna, your divine glories. Unless you explain to me your divine glories, by which glories, the glories by which you remain or you pervade all these 3 worlds. Iman, Lokan, Tvam Vyapya, having pervaded. Vyapya means uh, having pervaded all these worlds, the different worlds. Tishtasi, you exist pervading all these worlds. So that is how the Vibhuti Yoga, the revelation of God, according to Sri Ramakrishna, comes purely by his grace, by his mercy. He is the son of knowledge, and it is possible, according to Sri Ramakrishna, even a single ray of his, that sun of knowledge, to enlighten the whole world. So we are therefore able to understand one another and acquire knowledge of God in all, or reality or Ishvara in all of its forms, only by his grace. Unless he gives us the Divya Chakshu, so that the Lord will describe that I am giving you that divine vision. Divya Chakshu means you cannot try to understand the divine glories of the Lord, or try to envision those with the ordinary eyes. You need a special Divya Chakshu. So that will come later, but now Sri Ramakrishna is saying the revelation of God comes purely by his mercy. The gospel, he says. And it is possible for a single ray of his, he is the sun of knowledge, and one ray of that sun is enough to enlighten the whole world. So much of glory he possesses. So we cannot possibly know all the glories, but a little bit, one ray of that glory is enough to enlighten us. So we are able to understand one another and acquire knowledge. Whatever we do, whatever secular knowledge that we gather, whatever spiritual knowledge that we gather, everything is a part of the infinite knowledge of the Lord. And more than all these, whatever we know, we get to know him only by his grace. So it is the Lord alone who through his grace can make us aware of all the glories in its entirety. So if we want to know the Lord's glories in its entirety, we have to resort to his, we have to surrender to him and hope to get his benign grace to understand him. So in the next verse, we discussed this in the last class, but now the next verse, uh, Arjuna is asking Sri Krishna, how may I know you, O Yogin? He is addressing Sri Krishna as a Yogin. And he says, now, I suppose through your grace I know all the glories, but how do I know you? Through meditation. Katham vidyam aham yogin Swam yogin tvam sada parichintayan. Parichintayan, chinta means to think and parichintayan means to meditate. Through deep meditation, how do I realize you? How do I know you? And that is why he is addressing Sri Krishna as a yogi. Because only one yogi can teach, a perfect yogi can teach another aspirant who is aspiring to get the knowledge of yoga from him. So katham vidyam means how will I know you, O yogin? Tvam sada, how will I, by sada parichintayan, by constantly meditating on upon your glories or upon you, will I be able to know you? How do I know you? Keshu keshu cha bhaveshu, in different aspects. In which different aspects should I meditate on you? Should I chintayah asi? Bhagavan Maya, by me, what are the different aspects of yours on which I should meditate deeply so that I know you, O Yogin? How the, in effect, the question that Arjuna is asking Sri Krishna is that my mind is extrovert. I admit my mind, in the 6th chapter also we saw, he is explaining to Krishna, Sri Krishna, that it is so difficult with this restless mind, this mind which is incapable of concentrating to understand you. So how can my extrovert mind cognize your presence in the objective things? I try to find you in these things that are perceivable by me through all the senses. But I can't do it because they are too trivial, they are too ephemeral, they are too transient, and I can't see anything permanent in these toys. So the example given is the sight of the toys of the child stirs up the thought of that child in the mother. So the moment she sees the toys, she immediately is reminded of her child. Say she's some toys in some showroom or some other place. She will immediately be reminded of her infant who would have been very happy playing with these toys. So I know Arjuna is pleading with the Lord that I know I am meditating on all these various aspects of yours, which are just like toys for you. They are even toys. I know they are toys, but in and through those toys, in and through those aspects which are like the toys, in and through those, I want to know you. So just like a child plays with its toys and the mother thinks of the child, or mother is concerned that the child grows up and enjoys or gets the true knowledge. The mother doesn't want the child to play with the toys throughout his life. The mother wants the child to grow. So also, Arjuna is saying, I may be child playing with these little toys of name, fame, glory, wealth, and all those things. I know they are nothing to you compared to your infinite glories, these small glories with which with which human being gets satisfied. They are absolutely nothing compared to your true glories. It is just like I am just playing with a few toys. But may I, through those toys, have the means to enjoy you or to understand you through the things of the world. So, Sri Ramakrishna is to give a beautiful example that imitation sometimes also helps. You may not understand God in essence, but through His grace, even when you play with these toys, in and through these various objects that God has created, you can get a glimpse of that glory if His grace is there. If the Lord's grace is there, it is not impossible to get a glimpse of His glories, even in these transient things. So Sri Ramakrishna used to give a beautiful example. He used to say, just as toy fruits, in many houses, they exhibit these toy fruits and toy elephants and all. But the moment you see those toy fruits, they are artificial fruits, but they are painted and they are colored in such a way that they look like real fruits, real grapes, real bananas. And the moment you see them, you are reminded, you may not be able to eat them, but you are reminded of the real fruits. You are reminded of the real elephant. So also, the symbols and images of God, however trivial or however simple, however temporary they may be, if the grace of God is there, the eternal or formless God percolates or peeks out, as it were, through those temporary things. That is His grace. So we can see an ocean in a dewdrop. That is what one Swami Latu Maharaj, or who was also known as Swami Adbhutananda later on, he was an illiterate person. He did not even have, he was not even as literate as Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna at least could read and write. He did not even know that. So later on, he became a great saint, this Latu Maharaj. He was a shepherd boy, and he came there. He was serving in one of the devotees' houses, Ramchandra Datta's house. And Sri Ramakrishna saw his spiritual potential and then converted him into Swami Adbhutananda, a great saint. So many devotees used to go in later when he was quite old. They used to go to him and ask him certain questions. And they were surprised to see his wonderful knowledge. Once they asked, how can we know the infinite through our limited minds? That's a usual question asked by philosophers. And somebody must have thought, let me ask and see what answer this Latu Maharaj gives. He is not well versed in philosophy, leave alone philosophy, can't hardly write his name or read anything. But he said, why not? And immediately he pointed out to a small dewdrop. He says, can you not see that dewdrop? You see, the dewdrop is colorless. The tiny drop on the leaf is reflecting the whole sky, and it appears as blue. So why not? The infinite sky can be reflected in a dewdrop. It is possible for the small mind or the limited mind of a human being to a pure mind, of course, not a impure mind. That's why Thakur used to say, Shuddha Mon, Shuddha Buddhi and Shuddha Atma are one. So the glory of the Lord can be reflected in the mind, provided it is pure, provided it is transparent enough. If the dewdrop is transparent, the water reflects the sky, the blue color of the sky perfectly. That doesn't mean there is sky in that dewdrop, but still the reflection is as good as the real, because the reflection is of the real. If there is a real, there is a reflection. So all these symbols and images, this verse, 17th verse, he says, O Lord, Katham, how do I, O yogi, by constant meditation on these various transient aspect of yours, how can I understand you? How can I know you in entirety, in your complete form, in your true form? Then in verse number 18, which follows, Vistarena Atmano Yogam Vibhutim cha Janardana Bhuya Kathaya Triptirhi Shrunvanto Nasti Me Amrutam. That means now this is the final plea which Arjuna is making. He is telling Sri Krishna, is pleading with Sri Krishna, tell me again in great detail, O Janardana. Janardana is another name of Sri Krishna, of your yoga powers and attributes. For I am not satiated with hearing your life infusing words, life inspiring words which I'll never be fulfilled. I will ever thirst for your wonderful words. So tell me in great detail. Tell me everything about meditation. Tell me everything about your yoga powers, your attributes. Because if you don't tell them to me, there's no way I can understand with my limited mind. So, Vistarena Atmana Vistarena Atmanaha Yogam. Atmanaha means your yoga. You explain to me what your true yoga is, what your yoga is. Vibhutim cha plus the glory. Tell me about your glory and about the yoga with which these glories can be understood or perceived. O Janardana, Bhuyah Kataya. Again and again tell me, Triptihi, for my contentment, till I am content. I am not content, but I want you to tell me completely about your yoga, about your various powers, the glories, the vibhutis, and I am not tired. I am not content by hearing a little bit of that infinite knowledge. I want to hear again and again. So that nectar, that life infusing nectar. So is Janardana, one who is adored by people both for life in this world, for earthly enjoyments, and also for emancipation. He can give dharma, artha, kama, and finally moksha. So that is why yoga here means it indicates the power to know and handle things properly. That is what yoga karmasu kaushalam. That is one definition of yoga. So tell me of your yoga powers, with which yoga powers are necessary at different levels to handle things properly and make full use of the uh, faculties that God has given us so that we can try for emancipation or moksha. They are the attributes, the vibhutis of God which spontaneously remind man of Him. When he sees the vibhutis, he thinks of the Lord, he thinks of the all-powerful Ishvara. Absorption in the attributes of God is as good as absorption in Him. So, when we even in an incomplete way understand some of His attributes, ultimately they will lead to us. Just as thinking of or looking at artificial fruits and vegetables and elephants, you think of the real fruit, the real, ultimately that leads you to that idea of the fruit which is real. Though this may be an artificial, may be an imitation. So also all the symbols with which we worship, all the little glories that the Lord shows, these matters may be earthly. These powers or these vibhutis may be earthly. They may be limited in their scope. But still, if I meditate on them properly, these things in the right way, as shown by you, O Janardana, the Jivatma increases his or her perception. The Jivatma gets clearer and clearer vision, and the divinity manifests itself more and more. It's not that you understand everything at a time. As you go on meditating, as the buddhi or the mind becomes purer and purer, you reveal that much of divinity which is hidden by the covering. So the covering of the on the soul. So when we do that, gradually you will find that the divinity, as we dwell on the divine attributes of the Paramatma, of the Ishvara, then our divinity increases. They serve the purpose of purifying our mind. So as Sri Ramakrishna says, it is like the magnet and the iron. The relationship between Ishvara and the Jivatma is like that of a magnet and iron. The magnet has a tendency to attract the iron and it gets stuck, but the problem is the dust that is covering the iron. So once you purify the mind, once the dust which is surrounding the iron filings or the iron piece is removed, then the Ishvara attracts the Jivatma and they become one. So that is what Arjuna is requesting here. And he says, tell me in detail your yoga powers, because nothing is going to satisfy me. No matter how much you tell me, I would like to hear again and again, with the hope that just as the iron filings or the iron pieces, if they are purified by these wonderful nectarine words, I may hope to be emancipated, to get moksha by because the normal course for an iron piece is to be united with the magnet. So that is the relationship between Ishvara and the Jivatma. Now from 19 to 40, you will find Sri Bhagavan will now explain from 19th verse number 19th in the 10th chapter to the verse number 40th in the 10th chapter. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha means the Bhagavan now says, the Lord is now explaining. What is he explaining? Hantate kathayishyami. Hantate kathayishyami divya hi atma vibhutayah pradhayanta pradhayanta kurukshreshtha nasti antah vistarasya me. Hanta, now hanta means now, very well, in completely or perfectly. Hanta, te, to thee, kathayishyami, I will declare. Kathayishyami, the Lord is telling Arjuna, now I will declare you very clearly. Hanta te kathayishyami. Divya, divine, he atma vibhutaya, my glories are divine indeed. As you mentioned, they are indeed divine, but I will explain to you them in completely. I will not withhold anything from you. Atma vibhutaya. Pradhanyatah. Pradhanyata means in their prominence. In their prominence, Kuru Sreshta, the best of Kurus. He is addressing Arjuna as the Kuru Sreshta, the Sreshta among Kurus. That is the adjective with which he is addressing Arjuna. Na asti antaya antah. There is no end to my glories. There is no end to my vibhutis. Vistarasya of there is no end to the glories. No matter how in whatever detailed manner I try to explain to you, there is no end of me. The infinite are my glories. That is how the Lord is declaring. And then he says, the blessed Lord said, or he says, very well, now I shall tell you my divine glories according to their prominence. There are various aspects of my glories. In different manifestations, they appear in varying degrees of prominence. It's not that all are equally prominent. So, among certain species, there is one species which exhibits or which manifests the glory most. So that is me. So he will slowly take up one species after another in the created world and show that his glories are seen in the best among that species. So according to their prominence, according to their relative prominence, I'll tell how to meditate on my glories. So among these, among the trees, I am this. Among the animals or among a particular species of animal, I am this. So he will mention all these glories so that it becomes easy for Arjuna to meditate, or anybody. Through Arjuna is addressing the whole world. So because there is no end, I'll give you according to their relative prominence the details. There is no end to the details of my manifestation, but I'll still try to explain a few of them. The splendors in nature that we see around us are all verily the attributes of Ishvara. They are all attributes of Ishvara. So it was impossible for Ishvara to recount them all because they are infinite in nature. A few specimens or a few examples alone can be mentioned. This infinitude has to be inferred from them. You have to use your anumana, your inference, because there is no end to my glories, but I'll tell you a few of them, and when you hear about them, then you will get an idea of my true glory. So to define God from scriptural knowledge, that what he implies, Sri Ramakrishna beautifully puts the essence of this verse as to define God by or through scholarship or from scriptural knowledge is like defining the holy city of Banaras after getting an idea of it through a map. You just see a map or maybe see a video or maybe see something, read a description of Banaras, will not give you idea of Banaras unless you really go. So I will give you a few specimens, but that will be partly expressing what I really am. The truth about the universe has to be known at the outset, and that is explaining in the beginning, before explaining his little glories by arranged in the degree of prominence. They are arranged in its varying degrees of prominence, but before he does that, he gives the ultimate truth about the universe first, and then he tells these are my glories. Before he tells, he reveals a secret first. So aham atma gudakesha, the 20th verse says, aham atma gudakesha sarvabhuta sarvabhutashaya sthitah aham adischa madhyamcha aham adischa madhyamcha bhutanam anta evacha. So aham atma, I am the self. Gudakesha means one who has conquered sleep. That is the meaning. The one who has conquered sleep is known as Gudakesha. So I am the self, O Gudakesha. He is addressing Arjuna as Gudakesha. Arjuna is supposed to have conquered sleep. He is so alert all the time. So he is telling him, and it has another meaning also, that the inner self never sleeps. Once Sri Ramakrishna asked Latu Maharaj, please tell me when does your God go to sleep? So Latu Maharaj was confused. Swami Adbhutanandaji was confused. He said, how can God ever go to sleep? So this, when he addresses Arjuna as Gudakesha, the meaning is implied that the self never goes to sleep. The pure consciousness, which is the background of the whole universe, as the supreme self, it can never be unaware of anything. It is always aware. Awareness is a unitary thing. According to Advaita Vedanta, pure consciousness is not, it can never be limited. It is infinite in scope, and it is infinite in time, infinite in measure, infinite in all the respects, all respects. So he says, I am the self, O Gudakesha. Now, aham atma Gudakesha, sarva bhuta shaya sthitah, seated in the heart of all beings. I may be in all pervading, but you can find me specially in the heart, because heart is also known in Vedanta as the Chit Jada Granthi. It is the place where Jada means the inert nature. And according to Vedanta, even the mind is inert. Mind is just subtle vibration. Body is a gross vibration. The subtle body is a finer vibration, but it is a vibration all the same. So as far as inertness is concerned, all these things are inert. Everything except the Purusha or the Brahman, according to Sankhya Purusha, according to Vedanta, the Brahman or pure consciousness. Apart from that, everything else is inert. So I am seated, but there is a connection between that awareness and the Jada and the Chit. The Chit means Chaitanya, the pure consciousness seems to be connected at some place. There seems to be a knot. That is what Vedanta says. And that Chit Jada Granthi, the knot which ties Prakriti to the Purusha, that is in the heart. So you have to untie the knots. That is why in the Upanishads they say, you untie the knots of the heart. When the knots of the heart are torn asunder, when you remove the Chit Jada Granthi, now the problem is the knot is so tightly tied that you are mistaking the Jada for the Chaitanya. And that is why we suffer. We mistake the Prakriti for the Purusha because they are all mixed up together. So Satya and Asatya, or the real and the unreal, they have been somehow, Advaita Vedanta says it is because of Maya they have got mixed up. Otherwise, other philosophies says it is because of the proximity they have got mixed up. Or according to the Dvaita, they are eternally mixed up. There is an eternal Ishvara and there is an eternal Jiva. And he can at the most hope to go close to the Ishvara, but he can never become one with the Ishvara. But of course, Advaita Vedanta disagrees. But here, this verse can be interpreted in any way. But Sri Krishna says, we'll not go into the polemics or will not go into the detailed discussion of the three schools of Vedanta, because they are true, each one is true from a different level. It's not that only one, the Dvaita Vedanta or the Vishishta Dvaita or the Advaita is true. Each are true when you look at it from different angles or different perspectives. But this verse tries to combine everything. The Lord is the innermost self in all beings, which are just his gross manifestation. The effect is nothing but cause in another form. Whatever we see in this universe, so God is the material cause as well as the other cause, the cause, the material cause from which this universe has evolved, and the other cause, that is the cause which has converted it, transformed it into another reality. So both the effect is nothing but cause in another form. The Lord is the material as well as the efficient cause. Efficient means the methodology through which the material gets converted. So he is both the efficient and the material cause of this universe. And since he is using the word Gudakesha, he is hinting, Sri Krishna is hinting that if one is awakened in the self, he can cognize the fact that Ishvara is putting on the appearance of the visible universe. He is, as it were, pretending that the one awakened in the self, only such a person who has conquered sleep in the true sense, not that he is having insomnia or something like that. That is not the idea. Conquered sleep means who is always aware, who has understood the pure consciousness which is at the background of the visible universe, which is animating this universe, which is animating, sitting in the heart of every being. Heart, because heart is the center. So Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful example. He says, it is my cosmic mother, the divine mother, who has become everything. Because as Prakriti or as Shakti, Shakti is according to the Tantras, Prakriti is according to the Sankhya. So it is the cosmic mother who has become everything. So the transformation that we see is in the Prakriti, not in the Purusha. She of omnipotence has become the universe and the beings in it. She reveals herself as the body, the intellect, the virtuous path, the spiritual pursuit. That means from Annamaya Kosha to the Pranamaya Kosha, then Buddhi, that Vijnanamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, the spiritual pursuit, the different Anandamaya Koshas, all the different coverings are self-revealed or are revealed herself, revealed by Mother. The Divine Mother reveals herself in these different forms. She is the one who is pervading all this, the whole Prakriti. But that Shakti and that Brahman are one. If she manifests, she is Shakti. But Avyakta, if she is Avyakta, if she is in the absolute state, then Shakti becomes Brahman. Sri Ramakrishna is to give the example of a snake and who is motionless and a snake who is in motion. The snake who is motionless, if it is compared to the Brahman, it's just an example, but it gives some idea. And if that same snake, if it starts moving, then it is Shakti. So Brahman and Shakti are like a snake, steady snake and a moving snake. a snake which is lying inert. But the moment it starts moving and manifesting, that Brahman manifests as the efficient as well as uh, the, the material cause. So we don't say like the Semitic religions do that God has created the material, there is some primordial matter from which he creates, just as a potter creates pot using mud and all those things. No, that is not how God creates. According to Hinduism or according to Gita or Vedanta, God creates the universe out of himself. So he is the material cause and one who makes the cause into effect, the efficient cause also. So he is the material and the efficient cause of this universe. So Aham Atma Gudakesha, we'll read this again. Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutashaya Sthitaha. Bhutashaya, seated in the heart of all beings. Aham Adihi, I am in the beginning, I am in the middle, I create, I sustain, I destroy. And Antaha, the created universe, it is created out of me, it sustains itself and again is absorbed back into me. Anta also, I am the end of that also. So that is the meaning of this 20th verse. Now he will specify, he will give in the order of prominence. He will mention the different species. The different species, the different created beings. So the different created beings, among them, the greatest one among this species, the greatest one among animals, the greatest one among plants, the greatest one among the winds. So greatest one among the stars, just to show that when you see greatness of any kind, you should try to see the glory of the Ishvara in that. It is a kind of meditation. It's not the ultimate truth. He first tells the ultimate truth in the 20th verse, the verse which we just now discussed, that Aham Atma Gudakesha. We have to remember that the truth about the universe is first explained at the outset. Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutashaya Sthitaha Aham Adischa Madhyamcha Bhutanam Anta Evacha. So among all these creatures, I am the beginning, I am the end, I am the middle, the sustainer and the destroyer also. So everything rests in me. It begins from me, it's created from me. So that is the ultimate truth. And I reveal myself in the, I reveal I am seated in the heart of all beings. You can recognize my true self by meditating in the heart. So that is where the Chit Jada Granthi is. The pure consciousness, very delicately, as the Upanishad says, you have to separate the consciousness and the Prakriti and do not allow them to mix. It is because of the mixture, because of that ignorance, the Aham comes. Avidya gives rise to Aham, Asmita. Then we have Raga, Dvesha. If you take the methodology or the system of the yoga which is based on Sankhya, they say everything comes from Avidya. Or Avidya gives rise to Asmita, the sense of egoism, and then it gives rise to Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. These are the different kleshas, of course, but they are the ones which give rise to sorrow. So Dukkha Nivrutti, the removal of sorrow, is by meditating on our true self in the heart. And that is where he is residing. That's why he says, I am that Atma, the Supreme Self. Sarva Bhuta Ashaya Sthita, seated in the hearts of all beings. In the beginning I was there, I sustain these creatures, and I also destroy these creatures and absorb everything back into myself. So having understood this, now all the particular vibhutis from verse number 21 to 40, we will see they have been described. Adityanam aham Vishnu Jyotisham api Jyotisham Ravi Anshuman, Marichi Marutam, Nakshatranam Aham Shashi. Now Aditya, among all the Adityas, I am Vishnu. Of the luminaries of all the lighted things, that is Jyotisham, there is fire, uh, there are so many bright things, fireflies, the fire and all. Among all the things that illumine, I am the radiant sun. So sun is supposed for all practical purposes for a human being. Sun is the brightest shining object that we can conceive of, at least in our perception. We see the stars, but they are not, they may be brighter than the sun when we go near, but right now the sun is the brightest. So among all the lights that we see around us, the lamps, the candles, I am the radiant sun. Among all the Adityas, I am Vishnu. I am Marichi of the Maruts. Now we will discuss what these things are in great detail, but first I will translate it for you. I am Marichi of the Maruts, of the all the heavenly bodies, the moon I am. Nakshatranam Aham Shashi. Of course, uh, moon is a planet, but since it is the brightest among all the everything other than the sun, the stars, definitely moon is brighter because it is nearer, though it is not a star. But the light it gives, that's why he says of the all the different nakshatras. Nakshatra doesn't mean just stars. All the heavenly bodies, I am the moon. Shashi, Aham Shashi. And among Maruts, among all the different types of breezes or the winds, I am Marichi. Now we'll see what it is. So, though all flowers, fruits and crops and the whole creation comes from the same land, the best among them, the best among fruits, the best among crops, they are selected normally for exhibition. You don't show the worthless things. When you take a species, you show the excellent thing, the best thing among that species. The whole of manifested universe is the glory of Ishvara, no doubt. But only the prominent among them, those that demand our attention because of their prominence, because of their greatness, are selectively, in that order it is mentioned here, and they are mentioned as vibhutis of the Lord, the attributes of the Ishvara. Not that the others are not attributes. They are also attributes. But only the prominent ones are selected to give an idea that when you meditate on a certain species, you meditate on the best among them. So Aditya, they are the 12 names which are connected with the 12 months. That is how Adityas are named. So they start from something around April. That is how the Indian calendar is, of course, different. But maybe starting from April, they are Amshu, Dhata, the list is there, the 12 Aditis, the 12 months. So the 12 months beginning with January, there are others. There are Amshu, Dhata, Indra, Aryama, Vishwasva, Parjanya, Dvashtha, Mitra, Vishnu, Varna, and Pusha. So these are the different names. That is the list I got of all these Adityas. But the most prominent among them is the January, and that the Aditya of January, the presiding deity of the month January, is known as Vishnu. So, which is very much liked by all the people, because January is the month from which the seasons, or the months which commences his course towards the summer solstice progressively. The pinching the cold of winter, people are tired, and then January, when January comes, slowly the cold becomes less and less. December 22, they say, is the coldest day, or the longest night, the shortest day. Then progressively from January, you will find January is the month where slowly. Vishnu means that which is all pervading. But here the name of the Aditya. So among all the Adityas, the 12 Adityas which represent the 12 months, the Indra, Rima and all those things, he is Vishnu. Because January brings a lot of relief. The Makar Sankranti also you will find comes in January. So in the Vishnu Sahasranam also, the name Vishnu is definitely a very prominent name and attributed to the sun god who is traversing the universe. The sun was very prominent in our mythology. So Vishnu himself becomes, so the sun god is known as Surya Narayana. So he himself becomes Surya Narayana. So that is why Vishnu is very prominent, and he is the one who, with whom all the glories of the Lord are identified. So sun is the most prominent among the illumined object also. So then we have the 49 Maruts or wind gods. Our mythology has these different classifications. The wind that causes immense good, they say, is Marichi. So the best of the wind gods is therefore identified with Ishvara. So these are just examples, and Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, whether you meditate on the Adityas, the 12 Adityas, take the best one among them, the most prominent one among them, and meditate on that. Among the 49 types of winds, which has been classified, Maruts, see, that is the greatness of our Vedic culture, our Puranic, Vedic or Puranic culture. Nature, everything in nature is deified. They are considered to be, definitely they are not the supreme gods, but they are the lesser gods, but they are still divine. In increasing order of divinity, they are classified. So whether it is the breeze, whether it is the bright objects that are luminous, everything you try to see God. That the idea is, don't lose focus. Don't forget Ishvara. Lead a God-centered life. Whether you are dealing with light, whether you are dealing with breeze, whether you are dealing with stars, try to see the divinity. Take the most prominent among them and identify it with Ishvara. So the best of wind gods is Marichi. And among all the luminous objects, we cannot imagine anything brighter than the sun. And that is during the day. The foremost among luminaries during the day, no matter how bright a light you take, the sun is the brightest during the daytime. But when the sun sets, then it is the moon which is the brightest. The stars are there, but their light is nothing compared to the moon. So these two heavenly bodies are viewed as with so much of veneration as the manifest representatives of the Ishvara whom we are worshipping. So every time we worship anything in Prakriti, so as Sri Ramakrishna, or as the Ishopanishad says, and Swami Vivekananda tries to explain in his famous talk, God in Everything, which he delivered in London, he says that try to see that God, cover everything with the Lord. Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam Yat Kimcha Jagatyam Jagattena Tyaktena Bhunjita Magrada Kasya Svidhanam. So the Ishopanishad tells us very clearly that try to cover everything with the Lord. What does it mean? Try to see the manifestation, or at least not all the manifestation, but the greatest among manifestation, the most prominent about manifestation. If you see the Lord in them, if you try to see the Lord, that is why aham, aham. When he says aham here, Sri Krishna does not mean Sri Krishna, the body, but the Lord who has manifested as Sri Krishna. The Lord who has manifested as Surya Narayana or Vishnu or the Marichi. So these are every object that you see, every species or everything that you can classify. You say the winds, the bright objects during the day, the bright objects during the night. You take all these objects and take the best one among them and compare it, or try to see the Lord in them, or at least consider them to be the representatives of the Lord. So this is the type of meditation he is teaching. So there are 5 minutes. I can just take up one more verse if you like. So aham Vedanam Samavedosmi, Devanam Asmi Vasavaha, Indriyanam Manaschasmi, Bhutanam Asmi Chetana. We'll discuss this in the next class, but I'll just give you the rough meaning. Vedanam, of all the Vedas, I am the Samaveda. Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, we have the four Vedas, Atharva Veda and Sama Veda. Sama Veda is supposed to be uh, prominent because the chanter of the Sama Veda is known as Samaga. So, of all the four Vedas, it is the Sama Veda that is best set to music. It is sung in a musical way. All the three other Vedas are merely chanted, whereas Sama Veda is set to music. Therefore, it is enchanting to even those people who do not understand the meaning. Chanting can be boring if you just chant with three notes. Of course, three notes are there in Sama also, but it is sung in a beautiful way. And they say many of the Sama hymns are found in the Rig Veda. So, but Sama music is supposed to be the greatest among Vedas. Of all the Vedas, I am the Sama Veda. I am Vasava. I am Vasu, or I am Vasava means I am Vasus among the Devas. There are different Devas. Devas are lesser gods. Certain gods have been attributed certain powers, and these gods are representatives. So among all the Devas, I am Vasava. Of all the senses, the sense organs. You see, according to Sankhya, mind is also a sense organ, according to some schools. It's not just the karmendriyas, 5 karmendriyas and 5 gyanendriyas. 5 objects, 5 instruments of knowledge and 5 instruments of action. They are known as indriyas, gyanendriyas, instruments of perception. How we see, how we hear, how we smell, how we taste. These are the different organs of perception. We can perceive things. So among the senses, both Gyanendriya and Karmendriya far superior, but some schools believe that even the mind is a kind of Indriya. Because I am talking of the Manomaya Kosha, not the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the reactionary mind. Because that reactionary mind is just based on the different perceptions that we have. The things that we see, the things that we smell, the things, everything produces an action, produces a reaction. When we smell, we react to that smell. When we see certain things, we react. So that happens in the manas. So manas is also considered to be an indriya. So if you consider all the 5 indriyas, gyanendriyas and 5 karmendriyas, which enable us to react, you see it is the mind which is very prominent, because the mind is a common factor. It is the indriya. The things that you see are sent to the mind. The mind interprets it and reacts. Things that you hear also goes to the mind reacts. So mind is a very important indriya. That is why it is the best among indriyas. So manas chasmi, manah cha asmi, indriyanam manas chasmi, bhutanam, among all the living beings. Among all the living beings, I am consciousness. So I am Chetana, I am intelligence. Because without intelligence, the living beings are powerless. It is the intelligence behind those living beings that gives its glory. So we will discuss that. We are almost, we have to discuss this in great detail, because this explains the whole principle. This verse explains the principles of Vedanta. How in increasing order of subtlety, our human personality can be interpreted, and the human possibilities. As we go from the gross Annamaya Kosha to the Pranamaya Kosha to the Manomaya Kosha, the reactive mind, and then we go to the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the Buddhi, the intellect, then Anandamaya Kosha, how progressively the sense organs, the finer sense organs, they interpret, they allow us to react, and then all these are glories of God. So what exactly are the purposes and why they are considered, mind is considered to be superior than all the indriyas? All these things we'll discuss in the next class. If there is any question, I'll just see in the chat box. There's no question.
Pranam Maharaj.
Yes.
Could I ask, it's Vardharaj, it's verse
Yes.
20.
Yeah.
Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashaya Stitaha. The
Yes.
question is, the whole world is a projection of our mind.
Yes.
So in this verse, is Bhagavan meaning the self or thought processes? Or
yes.
Yeah, is the self here, is it to do with
It
our
is the
thought
Atman.
processes?
It
Or
is the indwelling self. It is not the Jivatma here. He is referring to I. When he says Aham Atma, this Atma refers to the innermost self. Innermost self means the all-pervading reality which connects all of us. That is why he says he the all-pervading existence or the all-pervading consciousness which gives awareness. That is why he says in verse number 22 that of all the things I am the Chetana. I am the Chetana. You see, he says that. We didn't discuss that. We'll discuss in the next class. Bhutanama Asmi Chetana. Asmi Chetana. Bhutana means all the living beings, living or non-living. So without Chetana, their existence is meaningless. They become jada. So it is the pure consciousness. So in that sense, he is the self. And since he motivates all the beings to move, to grow, to have a beginning, to create, to sustain and to destroy, everything happens in that Ishvara, and he is the self who is all pervading. He is the self of me, he is the self of you, he is the self of the stone in different manifestations. They may have increasing order of prominence. That is why he's trying to say, the Lord is trying to tell us that see the glories in the most prominent thing among the species. If you take the particular species, say maruts, the winds, take the best among the winds. So also that is just an indirect way of reaching the highest. That is not the highest. It is the prominent, most prominent, because there is more manifestation of that consciousness in that. So consciousness is there in the plant also, it is there in the animals, it is there in the stone. As the famous Sufi mystic said, consciousness is static in the stone, but it is still there. Consciousness is vibrating little bit in the trees, in the plants, in the plant kingdom, but it is fully active, dynamic in the animal. So consciousness, as consciousness, is the self. And that is why he is seated, because that consciousness, chit jada granthi, as I told you, can be felt in the heart. You may ask why it cannot be felt on the head or anywhere else. No, it doesn't happen. Even Shankaracharya, if you see the Advaitic text, somehow they say you have to search or touch that consciousness in the heart, to meditate in the heart. Because that is the place where our ego sense appears to be very strong. That's why when I say I don't say I like this, I'll say it like this. Somehow the hand goes to the heart. So there is something special about that. And everywhere you will find the spiritual heart mentioned. It's not the physical heart, it is the spiritual heart. So that is, in that sense, he is Aham Atma Gudakesha. Okay? The self that is in the hearts of all, living as well as non-living. You may ask, where is the heart of the non-living thing? Like a stone, does it have a heart? It has. It has an identity. A stone does not have the properties of an iron rod, because it is a stone. It says, I am a stone, I want to remain a stone. Unless you, of course, manipulate it. You can manipulate human beings also. You can transform them also, but you can transport this inanimate. But they have some kind of ego, or that ego which is the resultant of mixing up of the pure consciousness which is within the heart with the prakriti or the inert thing. So you have to separate that. But when they are mixed up, he is the Supreme Self who is seated in the hearts. But from an absolute point of view, the self has no location. He is all pervading. There is no particular location. But unfortunately, we are caught up in this gross universe has limited our scope, and that is why we find ourselves as limited beings, and we think that we have a beginning, we have a middle, and we have an end. The whole universe is nothing but a cause becoming an effect. It has a beginning, universe is created, then it sustains itself for some time, and then suddenly it disappears back into the cause. So that happens on a macrocosmic scale as well as microcosmic scale. We also pass through all these phases. We are born, we live, and then we die and get merged back into the absolute. So that is going on. Waves are appearing. In that sense, he is the self. The constant self, which does not die, he is in the beginning, means that self is in the beginning, the self is in the middle, and the self is also at the end. Is it okay?
Thanks, Maharaj.
So I'll take your leave now.
Yes, Maharaj.